Welcome, Tess. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Today, we are going to be talking about a very important topic. We can never talk too much about mental health, can we?
Absolutely, especially at the moment.
Especially at the moment, yes. So it's such an important topic always, but more so in the current circumstances. We are going to get to the heart of the topic that we have chosen for today, which is keeping family at the heart of mental health. But before we do that, why don't we start with what is your story?
Well, it's a sort of story of how I've got to where I am now, kind of is that I qualified as a health visitor, which is a specialist public health nurse, back in 1993, so a very long time ago. And that's working with families who have children under 5, so we take over from the midwife. And so a very large part of the work that we do ends up being about mental health support, because the families that need the greatest support tend to be those that have mental health issues, often with trauma in their backgrounds and quite difficult life histories. So I qualified, but I only worked for a few years because I was actually 18 weeks pregnant when I graduated. My graduation picture is like, yes, I'm pregnant with Sophie at that point. So I worked for a few years and went on to have 4 children who I then decided to home educate. So I then stopped working and home educated them because my son, so the second child, was very obviously on the autistic spectrum, and him and school was square peg round hole situation. And so we ended up home educating, and then it just fitted what our family was doing. And so the next 2 children came along, and we just got very involved in the home ed community. And then when the children were older, I looked at going back into work, and had always kept a real interest in that sort of the topics around my work. Especially with a particular work of someone called Helen Ball, who is a professor at Durham University. And she works looking at sort of evolutionary medicine and how we evolved. And I was really interested in that and looking at how babies sleep and how through evolution they would have slept close to the mother. They would have stayed, and for safety's sake, they would have needed to be close and next to us, and in the majority of cultures around the world that is still the case. In Western cultures we don't tend to keep our babies so close, and so that's interest in touch and how little or how touch deprived we are in Western cultures was something that sort of grew from there. And so when I went back into health visiting, that was something I was really interested in, and so did more training in sort of things like baby massage and baby wearing, so sort of and expanded that. And when I got to the end of last year and didn't want to stay in health visiting anymore, I decided that I wanted to pursue the things that really interested me, which all centered around family mental health. And although I wanted to look at corporate mental health originally, it all came back to what was happening at home, and we needed, the need to work on any issues at home and within the family. And there's no point in working with one person if you're not going to work with everybody. So it sort of came back to the family, and it is very much based on touch. Positive touch and massage is the sort of area that I sort of look at predominantly now.
And you do some really interesting work with massage.
Yeah, it's about looking at different ways of using massage. So a lot of people are used to the idea of baby massage, and then they're used to the idea of massaging adults. Yeah. And it's sort of the area in between, or the ages in between, and sort of taking sort of child massage, so the baby massage, but looking at it for children, and then bringing in essential oils. And then the thing that I'm really focusing on at the moment is storytelling and massage. So, and how we can use that to support children in a variety of different ways.
Yes, I remember when I was checking out your work, that definitely caught my attention, storytelling and massage.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I completely understand and relate to what you said about focusing on families when it comes to mental health at work, because so much of what happens and how people show up at work is dependent on what is going on in their personal lives. So it makes a natural sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that we can, you can do within the workplace to support mental health, but having that view on an understanding of what goes on outside the workplace, has a potential to make a really big impact on what goes on at work as well.
Yeah, yeah. We are going to talk more about mental health, but I want to share with you that we have Gillian here, who's watching us. Hello, Gillian. Thank you for joining us live. All right, Tess, let's continue talking about family at the heart of mental health. So your own life story is testament to the work that you do, because you have kept your work, well, you have kept your family at the center of everything that you have done.
Well, that's true. Yes, I haven't sort of thought of it that way, but yes, absolutely. Home education became the sort of central sort of focus of what we did, and it started off with Jack not fitting into school, but then looking at what would work for his older sister Sophie, who still is very, very arty, and looking at the way she wanted to learn. So yes, it's I do talk quite a lot to people about anxiety in children, and school comes into that a lot, and how that we can sort of look at different approaches to education to support families. So and then just shaping your the way that you work around your families as well, which is, we come across a lot in with people that we work sort of around, because and people who have their own businesses, who a lot of people have chosen to do that so that they can shape the way that they work around their families better as well.
Yeah, would you say in the UK, the corporate organizations as well as schools and let's say different systems, so whether we are talking about schools or whether we are talking about corporate organizations, are enough conversations around mental health happening?
Well, no, I mean, that's not a surprise that I say that as well. I mean, I kind of escaped at the beginning of this year and went and lived in Sweden for about 6 or 7 months. And there's a very different view in terms of things like massage and things. In Sweden, they have sort of tax relief for these sort of things, and I didn't get to the point of doing this, but I could have signed up with sort of specific organizations that link to businesses and give these tax breaks to businesses for wellness programs, which I think is just so important. And it's massage is just something that kind of everybody does, because they know that it's really good for their mental health as well as their physical health.
Yeah, I think we can never talk enough about mental health, especially in the current scenario of pandemic, and we have been in this situation for, well, it's going to be 2 years in March, so it's been a long time.
Yeah, and my sort of, I was going to say, my thing at the moment is touch, and of course that is so sort of pertinent at the moment, because not just for us as adults, because obviously it is really important for us, but for children as well. We've got a sort of a generation of children that are being sort of brought up with this fear of touch. Touch is something that's now sort of deemed as dangerous, and you need to be careful who you touch and how close you are to people and things. And this is, it's a really worrying message, because touch is such an important part of social development and for managing stress and all these sort of things for children as well. And so that's why it's really important that we have a balance and an understanding of how important touch is for us as humans.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I grew up with touch, and obviously it was special because all that cuddling and all those hugs, they were so special when they came from parents and friends and teachers. Well, I grew up in a time and environment where at times even the teachers would hug the students on special occasions. So I think it was beautiful. But I completely hear you when you talk about safety, because there are some people who spoil it for everyone else.
Yeah, and you know, it gives us an opportunity when we look at doing, you know, especially with the story massage and taking it into schools. And there's a real opportunity in there to talk about body autonomy and being able to say no, and how important it is whenever you give somebody a massage to ask permission. But you can do the same in baby massage as well, that you have that conversation, especially, you know, in circumstances where I haven't done this myself, but the person I trained with talked a lot about how she actually worked within child protection and would work with couples where there was issues, and because they were talking about, you know, touching the baby and the, you know, the positive effects of it, but also that it had to be when the baby was you know, was relaxed and was fed and was happy, and that touch was appropriate. There was that whole conversation around touch and how important that, you know, that message is to get to people who don't understand about that, but that really important sort of safety message to get to children, that it's okay to say no, and that you always ask somebody if they want a massage and say thank you at the end. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So this is the moment when I want to really pause and understand what you mean by storytelling massage.
So yeah, storytelling and massage, I mean, it's incorporating storytelling into massage within sort of massaging children isn't a sort of a new concept. But the way I've come across it is through there's these two ladies that sort of started this brand, if you like, called Story Massage, they're both sort of educationalists and massage therapists. And it's a really simple way of, there are 10 different strokes that they have designed, if you like, and there's a symbol that goes with them. And what they've done is they've produced a book with lots of different, and lots of them are either rhymes or stories that are well known, sort of, you know, Little Red Riding Hood and things, and incorporating the massage strokes into the storytelling. And so it can be a really nice way to sort of connect and incorporate massage into storytelling. But there's also quite a scope there for using it to help children relax if they find it difficult to calm after school, and even making up your own stories, or taking a story that is your child's favorite story and turning it into a massage. Preparing children, or in the classroom you could use it for preparing children for going up to the next class, with having a specially designed massage. And I'll just turn that off, to sort of help them prepare for something that's coming, or to deal with something that's happened, or to use it as something that's creative. So there's sort of lots of, I could and have done a whole seminar on how you can use storytelling and massage. There's a huge scope.
And my guess is it's not just for children. It can be used for older children as well as adults, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can use it for any age. I mean, they've designed it for children, but in fact, it gets used in all sorts of different areas, and can get used. And in fact, when I was learning and sort of practicing it, I was actually doing it on a friend. I think Joe was about 22 at the time. And I was like, you know, is it okay if I practice? He goes, yeah, definitely practice on me. It's really nice and it's really relaxing. So, you know, it is touch, it is massage. So it is really nice to do with any age. And you can incorporate it into songs or poems, just whatever's kind of appropriate for that and works for that person.
Yeah. So massage is definitely one thing we can do to improve our mental health. How else can we do that?
There are lots of different sort of ways within sort of being aware of touch in general that we can use to help our mental health, and even just things like really simple things like hugs. There's a lovely thing that I tend to teach people, which is a 3-breath hug, where you sort of ask the person if they would like to have a hug, and you have a hug, and it's a very, rather than just, you know, just a hug goodbye, it's something that's very conscious, and that you do, and both of you take a slow deep breath together, and you connect, because you're connecting over that breath. You've got that you're taking extra time because you're doing it with these 3 breaths, and it can be really kind of I'm not a particularly woo-woo person, but it is kind of really kind of connecting, and it can really calming as well. And so that's a really nice way to connect. And I also sort of teach that to people when I've done it. And they teach it to their children, and their children can then learn that it's something that they can ask for when they need to. I had a lovely explanation. Somebody messaged me to say that their daughter had been explaining it to their dad about how she could use it, and they can use it to ask for it when they're feeling really stressed, or and it was lovely that she'd really understood what it was about as well. But yeah, and it's just that awareness that in Western cultures we tend, and in Britain especially, we tend to touch a lot less than other cultures do, and I think that does have an effect on us, because it is it is something that is very useful and crucial in dealing with stress and feeling disconnected. And in mental health terms, disconnection is a very big problem in mental sort of unhealth, if you like.
Yeah. Is there a story behind it? Not enough touch in the Western culture? And I'm just curious.
Yes, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure where it really comes from. I think it is historical. It does go back in history. We've become a culture of being a bit sort of stiff upper lip, and I don't know whether some of that goes to the fact that I'm going to get a little bit political here, but we have a sort of a history of having our leaders be people that have been to boarding schools and have had to learn to be very self-reliant and slightly, and that's where the sort of stiff upper lip kind of thing comes in. Whereas other cultures are much more, I think, are better at being interconnected. So I don't know whether that's where it comes from, but certainly in terms of research, I think Britain is one of the least touchy kind of countries, really.
It's really interesting for me to get this perspective, because I'm from the East and I live in the West.
Yes.
So it's really interesting for me to really explore these cultural differences.
Yeah. 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 And it's because I think it's really interesting to see how different countries do, and even during the pandemic, how the sort of social distancing thing and things has been different for different countries. Now, being in Sweden, there's a little bit of a joke, especially within the expat community in Sweden, that social distancing isn't an issue in Sweden, because they do that naturally anyway. And in Britain, we're much more of a sort of pub culture, and everyone gets together, whereas in Sweden there isn't that kind of, I mean, people do get together, but not in the same kind of way as they do here and stuff. So it is really interesting to look at different cultures and the way they connect.
Yeah. Yes. So talking about family at the heart of mental health, how can we make sure that our family stays at the epicenter of mental health?
I think one of the things for me is, when I talk about family, I'm talking about everybody. So when especially when I'm working with people, it's not about looking at one member of the family needs support. If one member of the family needs support, everybody needs support, and looking at the needs of the whole family. So for example, if you have a child who has special needs and they need extra attention, then the other children in the family will need some balance in that as well, and it's extra strain on the parents, and so they need help as well. So it's making sure that we don't look at it focusing on one person. It needs to be the whole family and extended family as well. So and again, at the moment with the pandemic and things, I think that's brought it really into focus, because it's been difficult to connect with our families in the same way. If people live in different places, and travel and such like has made that connecting very difficult. So trying to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the whole family rather than just one person within the family.
And that's such a massively important point that you have brought into the conversation today, Tess, because when one person is suffering, their entire ecosystem gets impacted. My experience goes back to cancer. When I was going through cancer, my entire family was impacted, especially my husband and my parents. And when I moved forward and became a cancer coach and facilitator for Macmillan, I did some work for them and for a local cancer support center. I realized when I was on the other side of the table, I realized how much of an impact do cancer carers go through? Because as a coach, then I had those people as participants. And oh my God, it was a complete different story. So going through cancer was hard, but actually it was hard, equally hard for the carers, but in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the same sort of situation with mental health. You know, if you've got a family member, especially if you're, well, not especially, but I would say particularly if you are a parent of a child who has mental health issues, because not only have you got that whole, you know, situation where you need to cope with it and deal with your own feelings around it, but you've also got that, you know, that battle within yourself of working out, well, is this nature or nurture? Is it something that I did? And, you know, trying to balance caring for your child and not blaming yourself. And it is very complex and you know, difficult to manage. And so there's a definite need for parents of children who struggle with mental health to have that support and understanding as well.
Yeah, and my understanding is that the need is far more than the support that is available in our society and in our community.
Yes, because and I think that this is one of the problems, especially I'm finding, particularly talking to families who have children who are either on the autistic spectrum or they or ADHD, or they suspect getting that support, getting the diagnosis can take years to get in the first place, and not all institutions, academic institutions, shall we say, will provide the support that's needed until there's that piece of paper saying that child has the need. Whereas, I mean, lots of them are great, and they do provide the support based on what they can see the need is. But then on the other hand, on the flip side of that, you've got the children, especially with autism, that mask. And I've been hearing a lot about this recently, of children who are masking at school, and the parents are sort of saying there is a real problem here, because they come home and everything just explodes, a bit of a sort of pressure cooker situation once they get home, but the school's not seeing it because it isn't such a safe place. They're managing to mask during the day, but that causes such strain and stress on them. By the time they get home, they dissolve. But if the school isn't seeing it, they're not accepting it. So there's those issues there as well. So, and getting the support that families need in those situations is very difficult at the moment as well.
Yes, I definitely know a couple of such children who do such an amazing job at masking when they are not at home, that you would never guess that there was something going on underneath. And when they would be at home, everything would just explode.
Yeah. And we're going to know much more about girls as well. And that, I was going to say their version, but how they are with both autism and ADHD is a different presentation, quite often, not always, but can be quite a different presentation from boys. They can sometimes be more socially adept and able to mask more, and it comes out in different ways, and I think we're starting to learn that quite a lot of things that we would diagnose girls with before, actually the underlying cause is actually autism. and that's what needs to be recognised now. So I think a lot of those have been missed.
Yeah, I think there's a need to make people aware of autism and mental health in general.
Yeah,
we don't know enough about it.
No, and I think one of the things that I found as well is that we have this difficult situation that children with autism quite often present in the same way as a child who's had a traumatic start to life. So children with ACEs, so adverse childhood events, can present the same way, but also children with autism quite often are highly sensitive, and so are affected more by trauma. And sometimes if professionals go in and they see that this child has had a very difficult start to life, they put everything down to the trauma and they miss the fact that there's actually autism there as well. And so it can get, I mean, it is very difficult because they do overlap, but in general terms, that, you know, the way that we can support these families is very similar, but, you know, understanding that the differences in there is important as well.
In this moment, I'm actually thinking that it is anyway so critical to provide the support to families. But if we look at the adoptive families and foster families, then it opens up a completely new discussion, and the need to support children in regards to trauma and autism or autism-like symptoms. That's a massive thing, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a whole sort of support system that needs to be around, you know, fostering and adoption, and understanding that the sort of level of trauma that children have had to deal with, but the sort of autistic traits mixed in there as well. It adds another layer, and that's one of the areas that I really like. And I'm sort of exploring the story massage is within adoption and fostering as a really sort of gentle and safe way to introduce touch to children who perhaps haven't had positive experiences of touch before and need it to be in a really safe way. But also it gives the opportunity to sort of explore social stories and their story and their past in that as well. So yeah, that's quite an interesting area to look at story massage in as well.
I can only imagine how satisfying that work must be for you, Tess.
Yes, it is lovely to sort of see that connection, and that growing is great.
Because as you said, a lot of these children didn't have a positive start to life, and such adverse events right in the beginning at a time when all they needed was love and being cherished.
And I think we especially up in Scotland have our awareness of adverse childhood events, ACEs, and the effect on children, but also going into adulthood has really grown. And there was a brilliant team of people that took a film called Resilience on a kind of a tour around Scotland a few years ago, and it's a film that's all about the ACEs work that had been done in America, and it was shown in lots of sort of small halls and things around Scotland, and their aim was that they would show it in these places, and that from every showing somebody would then sort of pick it up and want to show it in their organization or, you know, their area, and it really did work, especially within education, sort of raised the awareness of the effects of on children, and that we really need to sort of look beneath children's behaviors and look at why children are behaving in a certain way, rather than just sort of punishing behavior. That if we look below that, then we can really look at why these behaviors are happening, and stop sort of things like, you know, there's such a correlation between school ACEs, school exclusion, and young people going to prison. And so if we can get in there and understand what's going on earlier on, we can make a real impact on people's lives.
Yeah. Tell us a little more about this correlation, please.
Between health and ACEs and health. Yes, it was.
And prison and school exclusion.
It all stems to the sort of understanding of the effect that adverse childhood events have on children. And the study that was done showed that there is this direct correlation between lots of things to do with mental health, but also physical health as well. So if you look at something, I was going to say simple, like smoking, the more adverse childhood events that somebody has experienced in childhood, the more likely they are to smoke. And so their increased likelihood of smoking is the same with alcoholism and drug addiction and suicide. All of them have this step up correlation between both. And one of the main sort of, we came out of watching this film and people saying, well, okay, we can see that is incredibly important. What is it that we can do without plowing lots of money into this? And there was this general message that was, it's about having that open mind and sort of to looking at why people are behaving in a certain way, and that actually having a positive relationship with one person in childhood, but also in adulthood as well, can actually turn somebody's life around. So for those children where things get recognized that there's something really going on in their behavior that's showing up in school, there is the potential to turn their lives around and stop this correlation between ACEs and offending, which is often related to drug addiction. Understanding that early on and turning it around, but just having people who can see it and understand and just show people a bit of it's a really simple message of kindness.
What I'm also picking up is it's so important to pause and notice other people, listen to them, and provide that support with an open mind, because something might be going on underneath.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's always that, you hear that story about that somebody who talks about something awful having happened to them, and then I remember reading a story and he'd then gone in this bus journey and or train journey, and his child was acting up and being awful, and somebody was horrible to the child, and then he turned around and said, well, actually his mother's just died or something, and people were like, and it's almost that kind of thing of like, we should always look at people's behavior and think, what could have just happened to that person? Because you just don't know people's stories, and having that, always questioning why somebody might be doing something.
Yes, I think if we take just one thing away from this conversation, this could be it. This message of kindness, this message of pausing and listening to other fellow human beings and providing that support with an open mind.
Yeah, I mean, I quite often say that one of my favorite sort of sayings or whatever it is don't judge a man until you've walked a mile in his shoes or moccasins or wherever the saying comes from. And I do then joke that my son, having heard that, turned around and said, well, and if you still don't like them, you're a mile away and you've got their shoes. But which I like that twist to it, but that's my Jack. But I think it's so important, and that was really brought home to me one of my very early days within help visiting. I was working in the Gorbals in Glasgow, which was a very poor area of Glasgow, and I would go into people's houses and know the importance of reading to children, which we generally we know how important that is. But I with the resources that they had, I was sort of telling people to sort of, because catalogs were free, and it was a while ago, so there were more catalogs around. Look through a catalogue and talk to your child about the pictures in the catalogue and such like, and just that realization that their lives were so different from mine. Their experiences of life, the poverty, but also the sort of having I was not brought up with alcoholic parents or parents who struggle with drug addiction or any of these sort of things. And if you haven't experienced these things, so it was a real eye opener for me as a young professional to sort of realize, if you haven't lived someone else, and nobody has ever lived anyone else's story, that we're not in a position to judge.
Yes, I completely connect with what you just said. I grew up in a pretty regular family, no alcohol, no drugs, no smoking. So I can only understand this as an empath and as to the best of my ability through intellect, but I have not really lived that life.
No. Yeah, absolutely. And all we can do is listen to other people's stories, because I went to boarding school, and I find that for myself, that's my kind of I found that really traumatic as a child, and so that's the only sort of link I have to being sort of disconnected from my parents, which is, I think, what a lot of children experience, an awful lot more than disconnect in families that are very troubled. But yeah, it's about listening to people's stories and hearing, but also hearing that the stories of hope as well. It's not all kind of doom and gloom. I've heard some amazing speakers talk about how they, and usually because they've had the support of somebody really important in their lives, just that one person who has managed to sort of turn their lives around, and they are, and they then use their adverse experiences almost like a sort of superpower, as a strength, that they can sort of share that with other people, which is been really inspiring as well.
Yes. And from my own personal experience, I can say that person doesn't necessarily need to say a lot. It can just be one little thing they say, but it comes, that advice or that comment or that observation can be so timely that it can make a real mark on the minds and the hearts of the people who are going through that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and I found, having sort of seen that film and knowing the research on ACEs and things, but being able to then talk to people who have high ACE scores about it and sort of say, because an awful lot of the people I was working with, they we were, and I'm talking with sort of child protection situations and things, and they just weren't coping, and there was just such a feeling of shame, and explaining that there had been this research, and explaining some of the sort of effects on developing brains, and what would have happened to them, and why that they needed to first be kinder to themselves, to then learn to heal and sort of grow from it. But so it was quite powerful to be able to talk about the film and the research to people who were kind of in those situations themselves as well.
Yeah. Do you have any stories to share with us from those experiences, something that stayed with you?
I mean, I had one particular client who, she had, a very sort of difficult early life and beginning, and there was, drug addiction in her sort of early life, but within, and she got caught up in that herself, and I started working with her, and she had a little one who was, I don't think, was between 1 and 2 when I first started working with her, and there was and she kept getting new people that was working with her, and I think that was very difficult, because if you've experienced very difficult relationships in your young life, it's very difficult to then form relationships and trust people in your older life. But in Scotland, I was, because I moved to England and I'm now back in Scotland again, I was able to, I had a boss who was happy for me to do some of my sort of massage and it was hand massage with clients, as long as it wasn't getting in the way of what else I have, needed to do as a health visitor. But I was needing to visit her on a regular basis, and I offered her a hand massage using some essential oils, and she really liked that. But it was really powerful, because it put me in a position where I was even sort of forget about the massage. I'm holding this person's hand for 10 or 15 minutes, and it really, it really gave us that opportunity to connect, which was really powerful, and meant that when I went back to see her on the day when I got kind of an emergency call from her, when she'd had her uncle had attempted suicide, and I literally walked in when sort of 5 minutes after she'd found this out, that he was in the hospital. It gave us a base from which we had built a relationship, and I think she actually asked for the same oils that we'd used before, and if we could do something with those, because she'd had this really relaxing experience, and she knew that it would help her calm and things. So yeah, that sort of connection there, and was able to actually before a child protection meeting, just literally sort of stepping on from having used them in that, had used touch and smell, because I think if we can bring in lots of different senses, it can be really powerful. Before a child protection meeting, she just got some of the sort of essential oils in her hands and just breathed them in, and there was that connection between the smell and relaxation, that it really helped her manage the meeting that she then had. So there was, it sort of built on the relationship, but using the sort of different senses there really helped as well.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I think there is scope for touch, and we tend to touch little children, but as we grow, that touch becomes lesser and lesser. And then there is touch in romantic, intimate relationships, but otherwise we don't have enough touch as adults.
I know, and it's a sad thing that I do on when I'm putting out sort of adverts for, because a lot of the work that I do at the moment is online, kind of obviously, but has had to develop that way. But when I'm working in person, and it tends to be the essential oil massage, that it's a particular one, it's called Aromatouch, so it's not a classic massage that I do, that I have a sort of sign that I put almost that talks about respect, and because there is always that sort of sexual connection between massage and massage therapists, and so sort of having to make it very clear what this is about, and that it is and I do sometimes get inappropriate responses to adverts and things. So
yeah. So are we talking about boundaries here?
Yeah, it's about very clear boundaries, and that I have very clear boundaries with it, and if I get an inappropriate message, then there's I was going to say there's no way back from it, really. And it's a shame, because there are a lot of men that really do really benefit from this type of massage that I do, that is very much about relaxation. I would say about 50% or so, if not more, fall asleep during it. But there are times or situations in which I'll only do it with women, which is a shame.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Oh, I want to book a massage now.
Yes. And there's times when I've had conversations with, with a friend who I think was just trying to be jokey about it, but actually I was like trying to say, well, actually this is, I was kind of sort of saying, this is serious. This is about people managing their stress, and it's a really important thing right now. But it got sort of turned into a bit of a kind of nudge joke. Like, well, actually, this is something really important to help us manage stress at the moment. So
yeah, that is true. Yeah, having those boundaries and clear boundaries is so important. Although as somebody who has been through breast cancer, I would say if I would place a particular request, which is going to help me, most massage therapists would play along.
Yeah.
But a lot of them would be not sure if they would make the first move.
Yeah.
So yes, boundaries are so important.
Yes, one of the things I'm really interested in exploring on a sort of face-to-face basis at the moment is looking at developing massage package for individuals that are bespoke. And so my original kind of thinking was looking at, because it was after discussions with people who are, I think it's actually people with ADHD, but how they would like massage, but they struggle with conventional massage. And they need time to get to know the person that they're going to have the massage with. They couldn't just walk in and off the street and have a massage, and just sort of whether you talk or whether it's quiet, whether there's music, the length of time, and all these different aspects and things. So it started off with looking from that point of view, but then there's other people who might have, sort of body issues, and so people who are trans or non-binary, and their sort of comfort with the idea of having a massage. So that's something that I'm exploring at the moment, this kind of idea of having this kind of package where people can get to know you and sort of create their own sort of ideal massage, but very much about getting to know the person first.
I think that would be really powerful, because if I think of my own experience, I've had the same person look after me, the same therapist, massage therapist. She's been looking after me for about 8 years.
Right, yes.
And I have no plans of going to anyone else.
Yes. Yes.
So I think that relationship and that trust is really important, especially when people aren't so confident of their bodies, when their bodies have changed due to illnesses or just because they are different.
And on the whole, when we're talking about touch and being really good for dealing with stress and things, on the whole, in sort of everyday situations, it is really important stuff. But it is, we don't tend to touch people we don't know. And so you go in for a massage with a therapist, if you don't, and if you don't know them, it is quite sort of intimate, if you like, if that's the right word, and I am always really aware of that. And I always feel like it's a real privilege when people sort of allow me to do a massage on them, because you are touching somebody, and yeah, it does feel like quite a privilege that people put their trust in you like that.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it is definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, this was such a good conversation, Tess. So tell us, how can people work with you?
Well, at the moment, if you're in Edinburgh, you can get in touch with me. So there's things that we've talked about in person, I can do in Edinburgh. So that's the Aromatouch massage, and that's for all ages. That's not just for adults. So I am really looking to work with people who have children who struggle with anxiety and sleep issues. But my main focus is about teaching people to do these things themselves. I do a lot of these things online. And my main focus, as we've talked about a lot at the moment, is the story massage. So I have a free webinar that's coming up in January. So the second week in January, which will explore, and I'll explain a little more about the importance of touch and the sort of scope around story massage. And then I will be doing a course which will be over Zoom, rather like you might do a baby massage course, but it's all going to be around story massage, so that we can sort of work on different aspects of it and explore different aspects of it. So that will be coming up later in January as well. And I also do sort of one-to-one Zoom sessions with people, looking at children's anxiety and how to manage that. Two different areas really, one around sleep and another around school. So I can talk about managing the anxiety, and if people want to look at home education and how that can work, I can do that as well.
Wonderful. Sounds great. But a week from today, we'll have the shortest day of the year. So before we let you go, are you able to give us one quick hack, one movement, one touch that we can give to ourselves to that can help us wade through this particularly dark and bleak time?
And I think it is realizing, because one of the messages we've had from the pandemic is don't touch your face. And actually, it's a really difficult thing to stop doing, because it is something that we do as a sort of self-soothing thing, that we touch our faces. So when we look at things like hand massage, you just realizing that that touch, you know, can be really soothing. It is something that we do to self-soothe, but you can learn to do these things on yourself. So just having that time and stopping and getting some really nice smelling oils, and soothing them, you know, into your hands, a really nice relaxing massage into your hands, then taking some deep breaths, taking sort of 5 really deep, slow breaths. And that conscious breathing can be really, really relaxing as well. So you've got the combination of the two things.
Yeah. And my guess is with massage, you cannot go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. You just do it. That, you know, we have receptor cells in our skin that react to gentle touch of skin temperature. So it's obviously has developed from that really gentle stroking touch, but also, so that does work. But also, you know, the sort of more classic massage works as well. And if people want to try out some oils, again, they're very welcome to get in touch with me. I'm quite easy to find on Facebook because my name is quite unusual spelling of Craufurd. Just to get in touch with me, and I'm very happy to send people a sample if they want to sort of try it, and a wee video showing people how to do a hand massage as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you are on Facebook. Are you also on LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn, and I am on Instagram. Safe, Healthy, Happy is me on Instagram.
Oh, so we can't miss you. We'll find you.
Yes, yes.
Tess, thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. It's been a mindful of great information.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been really fun.
Thank you.
All righty, bye.